Hey listeners, I'm Karen Riley Jeffers, NCSM's Eastern 2 Director. Welcome to our series, Learning with Leaders, Everyone Belongs in Mathematics. Thank you for joining me and my co-host Abel Maestas, the host of Teaching That Counts, as we talk with both leaders and influencers about their math journeys and contributions. Today, we will hear from our special guests about their inspiration, perceptions, and insights regarding instructional decisions that make the mathematics space welcoming and engaging to all. Listen and learn about how beliefs, practices, and policies must continue to advance to ensure that each and every person feels a sense of belonging in mathematics.
Okay, welcome everybody to this month's NCSM Learning with Leaders podcast. Woo! Karen and I are so happy to have you with us today, and Karen, this just been so great every month after month after month, and I cannot wait to talk to our guest today. One of the reasons is because, I'm a high school coach and I've done a lot of work with secondary. And when I noticed who was on, I was like, oh man, this is some great opportunity for me to ask some secondary questions, but also just thinking about how I'm looking into expanding and really getting out there and helping as many people as possible. So I'm just so eager to see how someone has taken that idea and really run with that and brought in so many other leaders into the fold. So I'm super excited about this month. I know you are too. So we'll go and get started and introduce our guests. So we're so excited to welcome Joanna Burt-Kinderman. And she brought some special guests, some teachers with her that are part of an amazing program called M3T. I'll say it out the whole word, but from now on, I think we're just going to say M3T after I announce what that is. So Joanna has been a math teacher and a teacher of math teachers for over 25 years. She is a project lead and developer of Mountaineer Mathematics Master Teachers. That is M3T. And that's the network improvement community of teacher leaders across West Virginia, which grows from her ongoing district math coaching work for Pocahontas County Schools in West Virginia. Joanna was named Leader to Learn From for 2019 by the editorial board of Education Week, helped plan NCTM's Centennial Conference, and served on the Member and Affiliate Relations Committee for NCTM between 2019 and 2022. She lives in the house she grew up in with her husband, 2 girls, and dog Theo. In her spare time, she plays upright bass and loves her bluegrass, old time, and rock and roll bands in equal measure. We got a ton to talk about here, Joanna. So welcome to the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Abel, and thank you, Karen, for having us here today.
You're welcome. Last year, I was fortunate to go to the conference in West Virginia that happened on Pi Day. I got there on Friday night, and when I got there, they were like, was there a fire going? And then
there was a fire going.
Guitars were playing, and they were singing, and it was fun. It was fun to walk into that. It was a great moment. I know Abel just introduced you, but if you'll share some of your journey in education that has led you to your work, so each of you, and we'll begin with Joanna first.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, it was just a pleasure, Karen. First of all, I'm going to not totally obey orders here in the beginning, but such a pleasure to have you as NCSM regional rep reach out to West Virginia and share with us that we don't have much leadership from our state in this national fellowship, national community, and really come not just as someone who wanted to share opportunities of membership with NCSM, but also someone who wanted to learn, hey, how does teacher leadership look and work And how does math ed leadership look and work in West Virginia? And you were so warmly welcomed from the singing around the fire to the session that you co-facilitated. And I just really want to appreciate you as a leader and just ask all of us to be a little bit more like Karen as we're trying to grow belonging in these math education spaces.
You.
So I left this house where I currently live with my husband, 2 girls, and dog Theo when I was 17, swearing I would never come back here. Had no interest in being a math teacher. And I intersected during college outside of Philly with 2 gentlemen who shifted my trajectory. One was Bob Moses, who's a civil rights leader and made a strong case with the Algebra Project that access to a solid Algebra 1 teacher and experience in a timely fashion is the civil rights issue of our time. That's the great equalizer that education can be. And at the same time, I had a math professor, Jeff Tukoski-Feldman, who really showed me that math could be a community endeavor, not a competitive one. And also that just the doing of math in Calculus 1 could really tickle your brain and just be super fun. I never knew either of those things before. And that sort of set me on a trajectory of feeling like teaching math was a thing that I wanted to do. And so I spent about 12 years teaching middle, high school, community college, and pre-service teachers, and really started feeling troubled by the fact that there wasn't a way to get better at doing teaching other than just doing it privately. And I really experienced professional development. I had some really cool experiences that helped me as an individual, including going to Park City Math Institute. Gail Burrill helped me learn lesson studies. So I had all these really cool individual experiences, but then inside the institution of school, you just went in your room with your kids and shut the door. There wasn't the opportunity to learn together in a way that really felt like it made me love teaching more. And so to kind of try to solve that problem, the only way to do it at that time was to quit teaching. And that really, really troubled me that you couldn't do both. You couldn't both solve bigger problems, affect bigger change, and also still be a teacher. and it might be the only profession in which if you get really good, the only way to advance is to leave. I think that's a real shame. And that's really the heart of Mountaineer Mathematics Master Teachers. The idea that we're growing together is that teachers can best serve other teachers when we do so with open doors in critical friendship, right? Not affirmation necessarily, but in critical friendship and really focusing on the things that most bug teachers. One thing I've learned is that across the board, teachers want to be great teachers and have the capacity inside themselves to approve at any given moment. And I know that to a much greater degree than I knew it as a hunch way back when. And I've known it to like the very core of my being through these women, 2 of which are here today, and women and men across the state of West Virginia in this project that we're growing together that's inclusive of over 300 teachers now and just over 40 leaders. These are 2 of them, and these folks serve inside their district to lead local improvement teams of other educators who band together, focus on something that bugs them about teaching and learning, and try to solve that problem in iterative cycles. And I'd just like to pass the microphone to them because much as I love this work and I think I've built some interesting structures for it, they're the ones doing the work. And so with that, I want to pass first to Brittany, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about Brittany. Brittany works in the place she grew up. She is teaching in the high school in the county where she grew up, much like I do. And she returned there precisely because she wanted to ensure that no kid ever felt like that where they come from should determine where they're capable of going, what they're capable of doing, and show kiddos in Mingo County that they can be anything they dream of being. She joined our network as a relatively young teacher on a local improvement team when she wasn't really feeling great about her experience as a teacher. And she has transformed, not only in herself, but as a leader in her school, in her district, and of the state. She's got the most adorable children, and you'll not find a bigger fan in the stands for Mingo County, including just today when her boys' basketball team ascended into the finals of the state tournament. So I'm really glad to have you here today, Brittany. And I know no introduction really does you justice, excuse me, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Joanna, and thank you, Karen and Abel, for having me. It's an honor just to be asked to join. Joanna couldn't have said that better about, as a teacher, you're just in your classroom by yourself behind closed door. My first 5 years of teaching were honestly just dreadful. I graduated high school with a wonderful GPA, never had a B all through school from kindergarten through 12th grade. I thought I was basically a big fish in a small pond, and then I go off to university and I found out really quickly that I was in a disservice and I was not prepared. So I wanted the students in my community not to ever feel that way. So if I hadn't had a lot of educational resilience, then I would have never made it through college, first of all. So I had to work really hard and make sure that I kept my studies up. So long story short with that, I graduated, went back to the school where I graduated from, made sure, to help our kids prepare. But once I got there, yes, I knew the math. Yes, I knew, I could do the classroom management studies or strategies and such, but I had no idea truly how the math went together, truly how to formulate the lessons, truly how to actually teach the content. So I was drowning. I was on Indeed every day. I wanted out of the profession, and I would come home and cry every day, and I felt like that my students were honestly at a disservice for having me as a teacher. I'm going to get emotional about it because I just love my area so much. And you come here and you see our area, there's not a whole lot. But I just wanted my kids to have more. I love my students. Whew, did not expect to be this emotional about it. But I just wanted more for my students. And so another teacher in my building ended up applying to be a Mountaineer mathematics master teacher, and she, as a requirement for the network, she had to build a local improvement team, and I joined, and it truly changed the trajectory of my entire career. I know people say that and they're really dramatic, and I'm living proof. I do not dread every Sunday. I would dread waking up on Monday morning and going to my job, just because, not that I didn't love the students, not that I didn't love the math even. It was just, I just knew that I'd go in there and disappoint myself, honestly, because I was teaching every single day. I was doing everything I knew to do, but I knew that I wasn't doing enough. And once I got in that lit and with the local improvement team and was able to interact with all of the math teachers across the state, there was nothing like it. I was able to get the support, and I'm still to this day learning how the math interacts with each other and the modeling and it's so eye-opening. So I spent that year on the lit, and honestly, the odds were stacked against me because, there was a math teacher leader in my building. So she was even like, odds are not great that you'll get chosen. I applied, and I was like, I'm just going to put this out here, and if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And I was chosen to be a math teacher leader as well. And so I walk in, very first summer institute, and I'm like, okay, so here we go. I feel intimidated. I'm like, I don't know, where I really belong here. I'm kind of a new teacher still, 5 years in. And I was in a room where, for the very first time, I finally got the courage up to ask someone who had started with the pilot and of the network. And I was like, okay, I'm really lost. I'm not really sure what we're doing because, they were using this math jargon and such, or N3T jargon. And for the very first time, I was seen, I was heard. They're like, I felt the same exact way when we first started this. I felt the same exact way as you did. And it built family and community and exactly how I feel back home. But it was with people that I never met before. So they were all in those same shoes as I was walking through my profession. And, I know teachers get a bad rep, we don't get paid this, we don't get paid that, but it's so much more than a career. It's actually a calling. And I'm just so thankful that I've gained this confidence to not only, one of the things we also have to do is have peer observation. So I was absolutely, it was nerve-wracking experience just having someone come into my classroom just to watch, and not because I was just intimidated, truly. And then that was eye-opening too, because they're like, oh, wow, you have a great rapport with your students, or, oh, wow, I didn't know this. And I was actually eye-open to, I actually do some awesome things in my classroom. I'm not, just giving my kids a horrible education, so that was great. And then it went from there to presenting in California with Joanna, which was completely out of my comfort zone. And now I'm on this podcast with you all. So I'm just so blessed and so thankful for this network. And in my spare time, when we're not winning state championships and stepping out of our comfort zones and having heart attacks because we're nervous about things, I'm with my husband and my 4 children, and we're basketballing it and going to church and just trying to make a wonderful life for ourselves.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. That's so true about so many teachers in the first few years of teaching, not just in mathematics, but in all areas. But I know I just went to a conference and we talked about how, knowing the math and the sequencing of the mathematics is important to being a good teacher. And one, if you like you just showed, like if you feel that way, sometimes that takes a toll on like your self-efficacy. And so thanks for sharing that and being vulnerable with our entire NCSM family that is out there listening right now. Joanna, do you want to introduce our other guest?
Absolutely. So I feel very fortunate to have both Brittany and your next guest here, Jamie Packer, with us today because they represent, oh my heavens, I have to start that again because there's an enormous bear running across my lawn. Enormous. That's the biggest bear I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay, we don't have bears in the northern panhandle that just run across our yard. Just so you know, it's not everywhere in West Virginia.
I'm in the southern part too. We do not have that here either.
Karen, I don't know if we should edit that. That's pretty awesome.
Might just stay in. I've seen a lot of bears in my life, and that is a huge bear. Wow.
We haven't had that one on this podcast before, so
hey, so much for the ice cream truck. So that is almost like, it's so timely because what I was going to say is that people think of West Virginia as a monolith, and we are such a diverse space in terms of culture and in terms of geography and in terms of identity, and yet we're all held together by these mountains and this like kind of neither this nor that. Like we're not north, we're not south, we're not Midwest. We're kind of our own entity, and there's nothing else quite like it. But even within West Virginia, we have the Southern coal fields, which is where Brittany's from. We have what was traditionally logging country, and now I live in the most rural county east of the Mississippi. It's 70% state and national forest and lots of bears. And then Jamie lives in a panhandle, kind of sticking up in a place that might as well be Ohio, Pennsylvania, right? It's just really, really different than where Brittany and I are from. Another way that Jamie's different than Brittany is that she didn't start her career in education, She actually moved to West Virginia from California. And she's a career transitioner, and she's also joined this network later in her career, and having a background in as one of the founders. I mean, I followed Jamie on Twitter. She was one of the folks that really kind of brought Twitter alive for me as a mathematics educator. And I was shocked to find out she was a West Virginian. She was kind of one of the orchestrators of the Twitter math camp sort of things, and she is a kind of founding member of this network. So one of the teachers in the room that Brittany felt intimidated in, and then immediately became family, was Jamie. Jamie made that experience for Brittany, and Jamie's a leader in our state in a lot of levels. She leads a local improvement team of middle school teachers in Brooke County, West Virginia. She's also the current president of the West Virginia Council of Teachers of Mathematics. She's been a Teacher of the Year for her district multiple times. She's got two really cool sons who we get to hear about often, both total smarty pants out in the world. And I'm just so lucky to learn with both Brittany and Jamie. And Jamie, turn it over to you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in education.
All right. Thank you so much, Joanna. And thank you, Abel and Karen, for having us today. Like Joanna said, I don't know if I would say founding member, but I was a pretty early adopter of the Twitter math community. I had come into education from an alternate route, and I started out in special education. That's where the first 10, 15 years of my career were. But I found myself being drawn more and more to math education, mostly because I love to lean into the tough spaces and the spaces where I have questions. That's where I lean. And I found myself really, I'd always done well at math. And then all of a sudden I realized that the way I learned wasn't working for my students. So I was really hungry for professional development around mathematics. And that's around when I stumbled onto the online community that was really active on Twitter and in blogs. And I started, going to Twitter Math Camp, and it completely transformed my teaching and how I thought about student learning. But one of the big things it did for me also was open my eyes to what professional development that's driven by teachers can look like, and how different it was from the types of professional development that I was having back inside my system. So when I heard what Joanna was starting, I knew I had to be involved, because I wanted a community like I'd found out there in the world in my home state. So I got involved with the very first cohort and developed my local improvement team, which has been a really great learning experience. And all those things she was talking about, like president of WVCTM, none of those things would have happened without this community, because they really pushed me outside my comfort zone to maybe see myself a little bit differently, and to recognize that leadership is really more about creating space for others. And so that's been an interesting part of my journey. So I've been involved with the M3T now for about 6 years.
Thank you so much for that. Between the three of you, you have shared so much. And what's resonating with me the most is just the space that has been created for teachers to support them in that work. And so our series is titled Everyone Belongs in Mathematics. And our leading question for all of our guests is, what does it mean to belong in mathematics? And so now I'm curious to hear more, as you can share about what that means to belong in mathematics based on the experiences that you each have had.
Can I start that one? All right. So to me, belonging in mathematics means finding a space where you feel like your perspective, your point of view, your ideas not only matter, but are an integral part of what's making that community important. And I think that's true in the classroom when we create spaces where students feel like their mathematical ideas are valued and necessary to the conversation. But I think it's also true in teacher education spaces where teachers don't feel like their perspectives, their point of view, their passions are taking a back seat to what somebody who's driving the discussion is saying. They belong not only in the conversation, but in the driver's seat of that conversation, that their ideas and their perspective are an important part of where things need to go.
and then I'll jump in there next. As a new teacher, I was kind of made to feel like, I was the newbie, so I didn't really have the right to speak up in meetings and, at my school, because my colleagues were actually my former teachers. So I kind of just floundered those first 5 years, like I was saying. And then at the first summer institute that I went to, when I finally gained that courage to talk, when they kind of like, yeah, me too, that's how I felt. I was like, I found my people. So like they kind of were vulnerable with me, and kind of like I felt the same way. That is kind of how they made me feel like I belonged. They didn't make me feel like I was stupid, or like I didn't have a right to speak up because they'd been here for 6 years already, or I was new, so I didn't have a right to ask these questions. So that was what it kind of was for me when I was at my school, because like I said, they were my former teachers. So they're like, oh, that's just little Brittany, like, just sit over there. If you have any questions, you can ask us later. But then I couldn't ask them later.
I think I'd love to round that out if that's okay. Just with like the motto for M3T, which we wear on all our T-shirts, on all our thank you cards, it's on our website, and of course the model and not the words, but all of us are greater than any of us, and we try to live that truth all the time. And that's not just to nurture a sense of belonging, although it is foundationally belonging centered, right? But everything that we do is made actionable in the same way. So in other words, Jamie has a really cool idea that she read about in a blog. The idea is not to replicate that approach to teaching, but instead to chew on it together and see if we can make little tweaks, see if we can make little suggestions, see if we can problematize together once she tries that. And that kind of approach is replicated in each and everything that we do. I think at its heart, we as West Virginia teachers feel, as Brittany shared before, a calling to this job and to do this job well. And our reasons for that are multi-layered. They're definitely a deep sense of home, a deep sense of that these kids are our kids. We all feel that way about the faces that we see every day, but we feel that way about our state, which has largely been economically forgotten. The steel that built America came from West Virginia coal mines. And the environmental movement, which is necessary to save the planet, shut down the coal mines with no legislation to replace meaningful, high-paying jobs. And so we're left with one of the most beautiful states in one of the least beautiful economic situations in our country right now. And so we all in West Virginia have a deep calling to West Virginia, deep reason to do what we're doing. And so we really believe that we need to rise the tide. We don't need one wave that's good in one district, in one classroom, with one teacher. We need to join together and lift. And that's not going to happen by a cool idea. It's not going to look like a hero. It's going to look like an invitation to get all of us engaged. And so I think belonging is totally foundational to everything that we do.
Yeah, that's so, man, I don't know any other word to say than beautiful. And how personal this job becomes. Not so much because we love mathematics, we love teaching mathematics, we love our students, but we see futures that maybe we hadn't seen before, and that we want kids to be that future. I know that, I think, going to college, I don't know if Brittany, you were first in your family to go to college. I know I was first in my family to go to college, and it was very, very difficult knowing that once I got there, it was like, okay, it's going to take my resolve to make it through, because no one else is going to help me do it. And I think when I got into this profession, I wanted a better experience for these kids than I had. and setting them up. And I think it comes down to our communities that we live in and we belong to, and we want those kids to belong, like they belong here too. We want them to have better futures than we did. And I love how you put it together in that way. I want to reflect on something though that Brittany had said about her experience with the other teachers in your first few years, and how those other teachers were, many of them were your teachers when you were in high school. And it reminds me, I don't know if you guys watch Abbott Elementary, but I love Abbott Elementary. And in this latest season, one of the teachers was a kindergarten teacher to kindergarten student to one of the teachers. And he has a similar experience in the very beginning of those episodes. And I also reflected on, wow, I've worked with some teachers where they're veteran teachers and a new teacher comes in or something, and it's very hard for that teacher to find their voice. And it's very sometimes hard for them to find a sense of belonging. I was just talking to my pre-service teacher today, and we do some, I do inquiry-based learning here. We do a lot of inquiry-based mathematics. And she was telling me, like, when we're going out to place teachers to place student teachers with the teachers, that we often have to ask the teacher, hey, can I try this inquiry-based lesson because I learned about it? But in my classroom is all inquiry-based, every lesson. Like we're doing group work, we're talking about voice, it's all this. And it just seems interesting to me how, like, you get in this career, you have some ideas that you want to, you have this passion, and it's so hard to find your voice if you don't feel like you belong in that community. And you're kind of fighting against an establishment there already. So that leads me to my question for you all, because I know you've done a lot of work across West Virginia with secondary, middle school, and high school teachers. Many, like you guys, are those teachers. And I'm a secondary coach. I'm a current teacher. I'll be a soon-to-be consultant out working with other school districts and with high schools. And I've worked very, very hard to foster relationships with secondary teachers. I feel like that's kind of the first thing that needs to be done. But, many coaches, many PD people that do PD for secondary teachers can probably tell you that sometimes they can be challenging. So is there any time where you've been working with resistant teachers and found success? And what was different about the approach that you took?
I'd like to take that one first. So I have a foot in both worlds, and I think I stopped. First of all, I would say we are resistant. I am at heart a secondary teacher, and I would change that pronoun. I bet, Abel, you are as well.
You know what? I could see it in myself too.
See there? Foundationally, we are showing up to a job that pays us less than our skill set and our degrees, precisely because we're in the middle of solving problems. Now, some of them are mathematics, some of them are people problems, and most of them are intersectional, right? And so we already have reasons that we're doing everything that we're doing. And I think that if you don't enter a relationship with someone you're trying to work with a question to which you genuinely want to know the answer, you're doomed before you begin. And so when I first started instructional coaching, and this is the foundation on which M3T is built, M3T is way cooler than anything I've ever done as an instructional coach. And if I could figure out a way structurally to do what I do with M3T as an instructional coach, I would love that. I haven't figured that part out yet, just because the structure of schools and a school day are relatively old-fashioned, patriarchal, and top-down. It's really hard to figure this piece out. But I will say that all of the instructional coaching that I did in Pocahontas County, where our scores went from, kind of lower quartile to one of the top in the state, I'm very proud of that. I didn't teach those kids. Pocahontas County high school teachers did. We're one of the poorest median income counties in West Virginia and one of the highest in high school test scores. So we're beating the odds. As we all know, income is the biggest correlation outcome on tests like SAT. And when you beat those things, that's a big deal, and you're doing something different. I would say foundationally, what we did different is start with a question: what bugs you? In what way is your practice not what you wish it would be? And really respectfully hear from someone about what that is. I think we spend a lot of time living our practice as instructional coaches out of our own experience of what we believe to be highest leverage changes for people to make. And that's a really dumb way to start. I think we've been starting it all wrong. And if instead you come to someone and say, what bugs you, you're going to be surprised to some extent with what they say, even if you've been doing it for a really long time, because if we continue to ask why it bugs you, then we're going to get to a reason that's a riddle. And if we enter that relationship with a person or group of people as a problem-solving exercise in which we're genuinely curious, because we all know that people aren't the same, teachers aren't the same, and the moves that'll be effective for them can't be precisely replicated. And every time there's a book about somebody that says, here's the script to be a great teacher, everybody who's a secondary math teacher turns around and walks out of the room, either literally or figuratively. It's just not who we are. So I'll step down off my soapbox, but I think, and ask Jamie or Brittany to what degree I live that truth kind of in this network, but they're also leading teachers, and especially I would say, Jamie, I'd like to pass to you first, but Brittany is a young teacher leading a team of teachers, many of whom were her teachers. And she's found a way to do that, which I think is pretty cool. But Jamie, do you want to add on, and then maybe we could pass to Brittany?
Sure. I do want to circle back quickly to talking about Brittany coming into a space with a lot of veteran teachers. And I think a lot of educators, especially educators that want to see some change and are curious about leadership. I mean, we are plagued with imposter syndrome for a variety of reasons, right? Brittany's might have been coming into a space with all these veterans. For me, not having a math background and then being a math teacher means I'm sitting in a room with people who know vastly more math than me. So I think a lot of that plays into the hesitancy of teachers to lean into the experiences and expertise that they do have in their own classrooms. As far as working with resistant or reluctant teachers, I think one of the reasons that so many teachers are skeptical, cynical, is that we've had people come in and tell us that they trust our professional expertise, but it feels like they're giving lip service to that, because the minute decisions are starting to get made and where's the room where it happens, we're not there. And so a lot of times I think there's a little bit of an eye-rolly response to experts that come in and try to lead us in a certain direction. And so I think we have to be really careful when we're working with teachers to not just give lip service to the idea that they are the ones driving the work. So for myself, when I work with my own local improvement team and we're really generating, what it is that's bugging, that always comes to us from our student voice. We have some student surveys. We look at what they're telling us. And of course, I come into it with a certain, this is what I'd really like to work on this year. But if I was to try to drive that, if I was to try to put my finger on that too hard, then I'm really compromising what this work is all about, which is letting teachers drive what's bugging us. So we have to work at coming to some consensus, and that takes a little bit of work. But that's the way that every teacher in that room has ownership of the work that we're doing. And it's not just me going, I don't know, I think we really should be working on X, Y, or Z. And I think Joanna, to her credit, does a great job at that, because she allows and welcomes pushback from us when things are going in a direction that maybe we don't think they should be going in. The work that we're doing right now, 6 years in, looks very different from what this work looked like 6 years ago. And that's because she has always remained very open to the voices of teachers as we've been developing this work and kind of pushing back. And so it's evolved based on the expertise, experience, and what's happening in our classrooms as we're testing out these ideas. So,
and for me, I think the biggest thing for me is I'm pretty good at telling people what I'm not good at. I am okay with being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm not great at this. I'm just hey, because guys, I was ready to walk away from something that I worked for 4 years, and then I was in the profession for 5. And that's 9 years of my life that I was ready to walk away from, and that was a big deal for me. So for me to say, "Hey, I'm terrible at this," was not such a big deal anymore. So I could get help so that I didn't leave the profession. So when you're open and vulnerable about that, people are more comfortable to be vulnerable about what they're not good at. So, and then I had good relationships with my teachers because I was a good student. So then they were like, okay, well, maybe she has some success with this. Maybe we will try it. So I think being open, being honest, being vulnerable with people, saying what you're not good at, what you need help with, is a really good starting point. And, you know, then you can all learn from each other. I don't have all the answers, and they don't have all the answers either. And as soon as they can realize that and we can realize that, we can learn from each other, because all of us are truly greater than any of us alone. Because, I mean, that's just kind of the whole network in a nutshell.
So, with that, and in continuing in that vein, a lot of our listeners do much of their work with professional development. So, what is some advice you can give that they can put into their practice, or additional advice that they can put into their practice that you've learned that has been effective with teachers?
I'll jump in first here. We're a network improvement community, but our Joanna and our leadership has always pointed out that we start with community first. And I think that that's really important, that you have to have relationships with people that you're working with. I think Brittany really hit the nail on the head, that if we're not willing to be vulnerable and lean into those spaces of growth, how can we expect people that we're working with to be vulnerable? So I think you have to build genuine relationships with the people that you're working with. And then the work will come out of that, because all of us, I think someone said it at the beginning, no one wants to be a bad teacher. Everybody wants to be good at this work, right? And being comfortable enough and trusting the people that you're working with enough to be able to talk about the spaces where you're not feeling sufficient, where you're needing a little more growth, has to come with a sense of trust. And that trust can only come with relationship and community. Just like we do in the classroom, we don't expect students to get vulnerable if we haven't created a culture and a climate of trust that's safe in our classrooms. We have to do the same thing in the relationships that we build professionally with teams of teachers.
Brittany, do you have anything you want to add on? I had a thought, but you could go first if you'd like.
You can go ahead.
So one thing I've thought a lot about, and I don't know if I've talked about it much lately, so I'd be interested in Jamie or Brittany's feedback now or later. But there's something really beautiful about what we in West Virginia call the math habits of mind. Some folks call them the standards for math practice. NCTM renames them, but they really kind of say the same thing. And they're really talking about what is the doing of math? What is the doing of problem solving? And one of them hits me hardest when I think about my work in, I don't even think I'm a professional development provider. I think I am building a structure to professionally develop. That's what I think I'm doing right now. But I really believe that makes sense of problems and persevere in solving them. If I could hold one for the math education community, that would be higher than the others for me. And I think inherent in like saying that's important, if you're going to be part of a professional development movement, is acknowledging that the folks that you work with, teachers, need space to make sense of problems. If we are sense making the problem, like saying, defining what the problem is and bringing to teachers that you have to do X, Y, or Z first, you're removing the most beautiful part of teaching math from teachers. Teachers teach math because math itself is beautiful, it's joyful, it's fun. Solving problems is a wonderful space to be in. And if professional development removes that opportunity to sense make and persevere in interesting problems, what are we even doing, And I've really only seen it work well when people do math together. And I think there's a lot of use for that. I think professional development opportunities where teachers can get together and do math and people can orchestrate that math is just beautiful. And in fact, that might be the only kind of trad professional development that I even believe in anymore. But most of the kind of setup opportunities for doing training don't invite people to problematize. And I think we've got to fix that. I think there's ways we could do that in a micro and a macro. I wrote about 4 blog entries once about it. And maybe I'll revisit that. It was about a decade ago. You probably could find it in the depths of the internet. But yeah, I think that's the most important thing. And clearly I didn't think this through before I started talking about it, but I feel it strongly. Thanks for the question. It's a cool one. Brittany, do you have anything you wanted to add to that? I didn't want to cut you off. I just felt kind of inspired to talk about that right now.
You're fine. I just think that professional development can never be one size fits all. It just can't be. And I think that a lot of the times we're asking people who have been outside of the classroom for so many years about how we can fix problems in our classes. Why are we not just asking our teachers? Get our teachers together and that's what we've been doing. So, and it's just changed my entire world. So
That's interesting that you say that too. I was out of the classroom I was in the classroom for 20 years, out for about 7, and then I jumped back in and I actually said, I want to teach summer school so I can start. I had been reading and got all this stuff I want to do, and then I got into summer school, got that connection with kids again, and right now I'm in the classroom again for this year. And it starts to, all the things I've learned, it starts to go, okay, well, this makes sense. This does it. I actually have to tweak this from the book that I read here. And then, these kids, the 3 IEP kids, how do I now tweak that for this? And so it's really given me a ton of experience on the day-to-day minutia and the actually also the bandwidth that I have, that I cannot possibly do everything that a PD asks a teacher to do. So I go into that, my own professional development, when I design it with that in mind, how is this really going to affect the teachers in the classroom when I'm doing it from day to day? Not that I'm going to be here for too much longer, but it does. It gives me a sense of wow, it would be really cool if coaches or people that have been out for so long of a time come back and do a couple weeks or a month or something where they're really inundated to gain relationship with students and see the day to day, because it does make a difference. So I appreciate that you bring that up. All this entire conversation has me thinking of Ted Lasso. Be curious, not judgmental. I love that quote. And I really think you enter in with curiosity, with questions, with problem solving. And I think that might be a great way to start those relationships and those PDs, successful PDs with those teachers. So thank you for sharing all of those things. This conversation has been amazing today. And we're going to leave off with our last question and last tip that we ask all of our guests. Give one tip that leaders can do to support a sense of belonging in mathematics that is connected to the work that you guys all do.
Be open, be vulnerable, and just admit what you're bad at and go from there. Celebrate your strengths and also celebrate your weaknesses.
I think I'd add on to that in a bit of an echo to Brittany. But we all like to kind of quote the iron sharpens iron phase. And I encourage more leaders who have left the classroom and leaders who are still within the classroom to invite that, to ask for your friends to be critical and to receive that criticism with curiosity and in a transparent fashion. So really to show that you are still a learner and make sure that in all settings you're modeling that learning. Because it's happening all the time for every professional development provider, whether they're in the classroom, whether they're not. But we don't always acknowledge it publicly. Sometimes when we step into that space, where we put our leader hat on, we feel a lot of pressure, I think, to live in the land of the emperor has no clothes and make sure that no one knows that we ever question ourselves. And that's exactly the wrong way to be, to invite belonging.
I'm like at a loss for words for just the depth to which you've shared the experiences that you've had. But to hear a voice from like those standing in front of our children, and then especially to hear about how I was ready to just throw in the towel. I'm out of here. I'm gonna find another job. You know what I mean? And then to like experience that shift because of the space of belonging that was created and the support for teachers. I am sure that there are people who are going to want to know more and want to like, how can I do this? Or just learn more about the work that you're doing. So where can they learn more about your work?
Well, I'd love to just give a big thank you to you, Karen, because I know that our invitation here, came through your hands and your knowing of this work. And you really being interested in West Virginia as one location in which we weren't differentiating between teachers and leaders in math education, but instead blending those things. I think we're the beginning of a movement that I hope goes far beyond our state's borders. And we are in some really interesting conversations with folks in California right now. I'm really appreciator, fan of Audrey Mendeville. I always say her name wrong, but she's who invited us to CMC South. And she's a really interesting thinker about dissolving those lines as well. So I hope we can continue to be in these kinds of conversations. And we love to talk to people who are interested. We have a website, m3twv.org, and we have a newsletter. You can subscribe to our newsletter there. It's entirely written by our teacher leaders and their local improvement team members. And one's coming out within the next couple weeks. So we'd love to share that. We've also had just great champions in the first 6 years of this work, and there are a few other podcast episodes that we've participated in. A little bit of press from Ed Week, so there's some articles and whatnot that are all linked on that website. And just really encourage folks to be in touch. In West Virginia, Facebook is still very much a thing, and our Facebook community, Mountaineer Mathematics Master Teachers, is very robust. There's a lot of sharing, a lot of cross conversations there. And if anyone else in the math ed world still lives in that space, we really invite you to follow us, join us, and be in conversation with us there about creating student-centered classrooms in middle and secondary mathematics and how teachers can lead the improvement on that journey. It was really awesome to meet you as well, Abel. So thanks for having us here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Joanna and Jamie and Brittany. Thank you so much for being on the podcast this month. Every month we learn so much. And like Karen said, it was great to have teachers on here talking about what they're doing in being leaders as well as in the classroom and moving West Virginia teachers forward in their professional development, their teaching throughout the state. So amazing conversation. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you everybody for listening, and please join us again next month when we have some wonderful guests on. And I know you guys learn as much as we do, so thank you again for joining us on the NCSM podcast.
We hope that you have been inspired by this bold mathematics leadership conversation, and will tune in to our podcast series each month. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. You can learn more about NCSM leadership and mathematics education and our upcoming professional learning events on the NCSM website, mathedleadership.com. You can also follow NCSM on the X at mathedleaders and using the hashtag NCSMBold. Until next time.